So I'm not sure who comes to mind when I ask you this question. People in your life that always seem to be smiling. Yes, it's like they've constantly got that thing on their face. And I don't mean the annoying kind, where you're like, okay, you're at an 11, I need you to take it down to a 7. And I also don't mean like, Botox gone wrong or something, like I'm always smiling. Not forced, not fake, but I mean, you see them and you're like, wow, I want a slice of that. Whatever they're eating, I want that in my life. They are living out joy. I don't know who comes to mind for you, but this radiating happiness that comes from within them. There's something inside that's happening that's making this exterior thing happen. A couple people in my life that come to mind who live joy well. If you've ever been to St. Ambrose in Woodbury, their priest, their pastor, a friend of mine, he's got a beard, he wears Birkenstocks, he kind of glides when he walks, You know these people. Father Peter Williams is his name. He's brother of the bishop. And he is just a riot. But that man must sleep with a smile on his face. I mean, really, if you woke him up in the middle of the night, he'd be like... And then the other one that comes to mind is my dad. I remember going to Mass as a kid, and I would look at him, and he has this smile on his face. He's joyful. And I just grew up seeing this, but it was honestly amazing. And I'm sure you have your own examples. Not a forced thing. You cannot just push harder and make yourself joyful. I've tried. It doesn't work. It actually comes from somewhere else. And secondly, what I want to say is each person is different. So the way that you live out joy is going to look different than the person next to you. Right? If St. John Neumann, if we were all cookie-cutter Christians, we'd go out into Eagan and they'd be like, something's weird going on in that church. We're all like happy to be here, forced. No, that's not what I'm talking about. But what I am challenging us is I think sometimes we shut down the experience of joy in our own hearts. We're afraid that either people are going to judge us for showing joy, like, okay, who put the nickel in him, Or we're afraid if we feel it, it might go away and that's going to be painful. What if I don't feel that again? What if I don't experience that again? And so we kind of talk ourselves into like, well, I'm just going to be numb. And so I'm sure you've seen this interacting with some people, but you go up to them, you approach them, and it's like, you could tell them the best news in the world, and they're like, like, the Vikings won the Super Bowl. Or you could tell them, like, final play of the game, your quarterback's going to get face masked, and they're not going to call it. And then they're still like, there's this numbness. But that's not how God made us. He actually made us to experience joy profoundly, but it is not something that you and I can artificially make. We actually can live this. We can live this expression of joy in our lives. I remember being at Mass as a kid. I told you about my dad, and this was when I was like a teenager, so I was a little stinker probably. But I'm looking at him, and I'm just kind of rolling my eyes, like, oh, why is he always doing that, And so I asked God in my heart, Lord, where is that coming from? Why is he smiling? And what I heard in my heart was this. God said to me, it is very hard not to smile when you realize you are being smiled at. It is very hard not to smile when you realize you are being smiled at. When you realize someone is taking joy in you, it is very easy then to show joy back. So if you've ever been at Mass and you have, a 1-year-old or 2-year-old looking at you, smiling at you in the pew in front of you, unless you don't have a heartbeat, you're probably going to smile back. Or if you're walking through Walmart, don't be weird about it, but if you smile at someone, they're probably going to smile back at you. It's our instinct. The reason we're able to be joyful is because of this experience, we are seeing ourselves being delighted in. And that's what I want to talk about. While we see joy as this external thing There's actually a couple steps that are happening before we even get to the smile or the laughter or however you would manifest joy in your own life. There's something going on interiorly and we just hit on it. It originates somewhere else. This is not something we force. What my dad, Father Peter Williams, or any of these other people that came to your mind that live joy well, what they are experiencing is a byproduct of seeing themselves to be delighted in, smiled at, loved. I love that word delight. We hear in the scriptures, when Jesus is baptized, the Father says, "You are my beloved Son with whom I'm well pleased." Or in another translation, well pleased is actually in whom I delight. And when you and I are baptized, we become little Jesuses, to put it straight. We become other Jesuses in the world. You are another Jesus. You are a Christian. You are following his way. He is living his life within you. And so when God the Father says, "Jesus, you are my beloved Son in whom I delight," he's saying the same thing to you. You are another Jesus, you individually. Don't hear this as the collective. And we profess every Sunday that Jesus, God, is the way, the truth, and the life. He sees things as they actually are. Did you know that he knows more about you? He can see you in your life more accurately than even you can see it. And so when he looks at you and says, "You are delightful to me," that's not a prideful thing. It's actually the truth. I made you delightful. I delight in you. And when we actually experience that, God smiling upon us, "You are my beloved son. You are my beloved daughter. I delight in you." Imagine a dad so proud of his kid. Wow. That changes the way that you live. That delight. A seminarian was trying to talk about his experience of this, and he said, "In my prayer, God revealed to me, every time God the Father says my name, he starts laughing. He can't even get through my whole name without cracking up." I'm like, that is so beautiful. The very fibers of your existence bring God joy. It puts a smile on his face. Have you ever seen in your prayer God look at you with joy? Have you ever seen another human being, maybe that would be a great image to pray with, look at you with hope and with joy? Because I guarantee you that's not just a cheesy feeling. It actually changes the way that you and I live. When you know yourself to be loved, you can walk into a social event. You can walk into a party or wherever you're going. All of a sudden, I have nothing left to prove. I'm delightful. Whether you like what I'm saying or not, whether you misunderstand me or not, I was made delightful. It is who I am, and every single day I spend time in the crossfires of that delight. Every single day, I go before him who tells me, "You are delightful. You are my beloved son. With you I am well pleased." But by the time we see joy on people's faces, we're already at the third step. There's 2 steps before we even get to that exterior manifestation. So here they are. 1, we need to notice the reality. I think there are many people, as I said, that are numb to this reality. Either they don't see themselves to be delighted in, or they choose not to see it. They choose not to believe it. We need to notice it. We absolutely need to have our eyes and ears open to the way that God actually sees us. The way that the truth, the person who hardwired us, made us. We need to notice reality. Secondly, even if you notice it, you kind of need to step into the crossfires. You need to allow this to penetrate inside of you. You need to spend time in the presence of him who finds you delightful. What do I mean by this? Think about the suntan, okay? You're never going to get tan if you never spend time in the sun, even if you know the sun is there intellectually. Unless you step out and allow yourselves to be hit by the rays, you will never have that tan, unless you have really good genetics, which I do not have. We need to spend time being delighted in. being loved. And that actually changes the way that you live. An example of this, St. John Vianney, he was a parish priest in France. There was a poor person that would come into his church every day and just kind of sit there. And so John Vianney went up and asked him, he's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I'm praying." "What are you doing when you pray?" And the poor person said, "I look at him and he looks at me." We haven't even gotten to words yet. I sit there and let him love me. I sit there and receive a suntan. Prayer is God's work on me. I am being delighted in. There's a lot packed into that little sentence there. Or as Bishop DeGrood in South Dakota, he's like, celebrity crush of mine. Prayer is looking at God, looking at you with love. If we each in this church, every day until Christmas, spent 15 minutes in those crossfires of love, you may not be able to sit out in the sun and come back in the house 15 minutes later and say, "I'm tan, you see? It happened at 12:56. You're not going to know how or when. But I guarantee you, if you're faithful to going out and becoming tan, a couple weeks from now, you're not going to notice when it happened, but you will notice that it happened. If you and I dedicated 15 minutes to prayer, to sitting in that delight, to finding ourselves actually joyful, actually delightful in the presence of the God who made us, your life would change. My life would change. I guarantee it. So here, I was in the middle of three things and got a little off track. So we notice reality, we spend time regularly in the crossfires, and then finally, it affects your life. It affects the way that you live. Now you have this joyful, this radiating love coming off of your face. I am loved. I am delightful to God. So we cannot force this joy. It comes from another source. But man, when you find it, when you find this joy, you never want to trade it for the world. It is a foretaste of what is to come in heaven. And so we just make our prayer today. I just ask Jesus to reveal to us again our identity as the sons of his Father, and that we are delightful, that our existence brings joy, a smile, laughter to God's face, and that we could live that out in our daily life.